So Game of Thrones doesn't suck as bad as people made me think it would. Yeah. This is the taste of backlash I'm about to get. So I recently just watched through the entirety of Game of Thrones season 1 through 8. I'm not talking about the latest Game of Thrones series, House of Dragons. I'm speaking about the original 8 seasons Game of Thrones with the good old Jon Snow and all of that jazz. And I'll be honest with you, originally I had seen the first 6 or so seasons and I kind of just fell off the map with it. It wasn't because of any backlash, because at that particular point there wasn't major backlash per se. I just kind of fell off of it and I was like, okay, you know what, it's time to right the wrongs I've done and let me finish the series that I invested 6 seasons worth of material of watching and see how it all goes. Now I went into this one fully expecting that it was going to be a train wreck moving forward, because a lot of people said as Game of Thrones continues it gets worse and worse, and the ending of Game of Thrones is absolute hogwash, terrible, garbage, trash, you name the synonym regarding filth, and they said Game of Thrones was that. Off rip with my rewatch, I can tell you right now that seasons 1 through 4 and maybe a couple of episodes of 5, but definitely 1 through 4 are hands down masterpieces. Like, I absolutely still stand by the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones is unmatched, from of course season 1 with Ned Stark, season 2 the Battle of Blackwater, season 3 and 4 the whole Joffrey Red Wedding, all of that stuff still is uncontested classic material, discarding of course how things go on later on. That is not what I am basing my opinion on. I'm solely basing it on my first watch and my rewatch. The first 4 seasons are classic. They're just amazing, from Joffrey being the perfect pompous villain that is so satisfying to see him finally fall. All of the stuff with Stannis' battle on Blackwater, all of that was fantastic. The beginnings of Arya's journey to becoming a warrior and just a merciless person, all of it was just amazing. In particular, Tyrion Lannister, dog, those first 4 seasons Tyrion was freaking incredible. But post season 4, I believe it's 5 and on, don't quote me on that, it might be 6 and on, but I'm pretty sure it's 5 and on. That's where the books completely stopped. The material that they were adapting to make this show had ran out. I know that George R. R. Martin had gave them a basic outline of, hey, this is how it's supposed to end, these are some major plot points, you go along with it. They pretty much did like what Dragon Ball Super does, where Kira Toriyama gives them, hey, here's what happens here, here's what happens here, you fill in the blanks, go on with your day. That's pretty much what Game of Thrones was post season 4, and it showed. It 100% showed. I was just there like, wow. The moment I started to notice where Game of Thrones lost its flair was with the death of Tywin Lannister, the head of the Lannister household. When he died on the shitter, he took the show with him. No. Because seasons 5 through the first half, I would argue, of 7, I just felt like, ugh. It felt like it lost so much of the soul of it. And you could see clear as day that no matter what you want to say about George R. R. Martin, finish these books, bro. Finish these books. He is a genius for a reason. There's a reason why Hunter x Hunter, you need Yoshihiro Togashi. There's a reason why the Naruto franchise, you need Masashi Kishimoto, because you take the original creator out of the equation and you lose the spirit, the soul, and even the brain cells of a lot of characters. Because one of the things I noticed post season 4 in particular, again once it ran out of book material, was the characters started feeling way out of character, and a lot of characters felt like they got a lot more stupider. Like Tyrion Lannister's character, I feel like went straight nosediving down from the moment his father died. Not only, of course, you could throw the argument, well, his character switched, dog, like his whole life switched. He had to evacuate from King's Landing, he was a wanted criminal, his life of whoremongering, as he would call it, was pretty much coming to an end. But still, I would say that after that one, Tyrion never felt as smart and intelligent as he felt those first 4 seasons. You know, he guided them to a victory against Stannis Baratheon in the Battle of Blackwater. He was a freaking genius, and a lot of people put their faith behind him. But after his father died and they ran out of book material, Tyrion just went nosediving down. He went from being intelligent, and that quote that he would say, that's me, I drink and I know things. to I drink and I don't know a goddamn thing, because dog Tyrion just became really dumb. He would make so many errors. For crying out loud, once he joined Daenerys's army, he just kind of went downhill as just being an idiot. How many mistakes he made in her army, how many things that if he would have just advised her a different way, things may have not gotten to where they went, to where ultimately Daenerys freaking destroys King's Landing, blows it all up with her dragons and stuff like that. I think if Tyrion would have not made a lot of mistakes and just would have straight up and down early on said, let's go a different route, it probably would have been a lot better off for everybody, and maybe Daenerys wouldn't have gone bonkers towards the end. But like I said, Tyrion's character diminished immensely very rapidly post season 5, or post his father dying on the shitter, him shooting his father with the arrow. And it just felt like for the most part seasons 5 through again like the first half of 7, there was a lot of misses, a few hits here and there, but for the most part, like the whole thing of Daenerys having to go back and reclaim the rest of the Dothraki and whatnot, it just felt a little bit sluggish, and sometimes I was bored. I'll be honest with you. I went from faithfully, when my rewatch was going on every single night, I would go on and on until I couldn't no more, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, tired as hell, because I was marathoning the living crap out of Game of Thrones. I couldn't stop watching. Once it got to like season 5, 6-ish around there, that's when I was just kind of like, I'll watch it later. I'll finish this bad boy up here and there. Also, thankfully, I somehow, someway, magically managed to avoid what the actual ending was. Because to be honest with you, one of the things I thought, because I saw a promotional image, was that Sansa was going to take the Iron Throne. I'm not even going to lie. I saw that one image floating around of her with the crown on her head, and I wanted to strangle myself like, this is why people hate Game of Thrones, huh? Sansa became the king on the Iron Throne, or the queen on the Iron Throne. Sansa's the protector of the realm. How did this happen? How did they drop the ball? But thankfully, I was wrong on that. I want to point out something good that I'm going to stick with wholeheartedly from start to finish, minus one aspect. Arya Stark was a fantastic character. She was through and through everything she set out to do, becoming, no name, so to speak, and then eventually accepting, no, I'm Arya Stark. All of her adventure was just an incredible masterclass at showcasing proper training in the most deadliest way possible, so a little girl could go from, helpless little girl, so to speak, to an absolute ruthless, cutthroat warrior that Arya Stark became, even saving everyone at the battle against the White Walkers and whatnot. That scene when she finally finished the Night King, that was incredible and amazing. I absolutely loved it. You could throw the argument, yo dog, the Night King got outsmarted by a little girl, but this isn't an ordinary little girl. This is one that went through all sorts of insane things that majority of people wouldn't go through. In fact, so much so that somebody like the Hound, one of the greatest warriors in the kingdom, maybe I might be overselling him just a little bit, but he was pretty freaking awesome, had to look at her and say, oh, she really don't need protection. Even Brienne of Tarth was like, yeah, probably don't have to help that one, so to speak. So she just was incredible. The only thing I would say where they started to fumble Arya Stark was the ultimate rushed season 8, where suddenly she did no longer reference to the fact that she's able to use the many faces technique. She doesn't use that anymore. She went to King's Landing to take a long walk for the finale. Like, why did he go to King's Landing again? I get it that it was this whole conflict of don't become an Avenger, don't be like the Hound, so to speak. So there's that self-realization process, but in the grand scope of things, it was like you took a walk and unfortunately accidentally got a few people killed because you just kind of was useless in that last part of the story. But nevertheless, I'm going to stand on that Arya Stark was freaking awesome through and through. One of my favorite characters, alongside, of course, Jon Snow. Say what you want about Jon Snow, but they held through and through, and they made sure that one of George R. Martin's original and brilliant ideas with Jon Snow was, for the most part, executed properly. Of course, again, until towards the end. But the whole reveal of him being Aegon Targaryen, that Ned wasn't his father, and his father was actually a Targaryen, and Ned's sister was the mother, all of that good stuff really tied in very well. Unfortunately, it wasn't utilized properly towards the end. Jaime Lannister's character development, while some could argue like, dog, so after you laid with Brienne of Tarth and all of that good stuff, in the end you still ran back to Cersei. If you're at a crossroads in your life and you're just love struck and you want that person so badly, you will make the mistake of throwing away something really good for something really bad. And the conflict that Jaime Lannister had towards the end, and I think if they had a little bit more time, that would have been fleshed out a little bit more properly, because the big elephant in the room of the whole series is the fact that it needed those 2 extra seasons that HBO was ordering that they never went through with. Instead of getting 10 seasons, we got 7.5 seasons basically, because 8 was only 6 episodes, and it affected it greatly. Like, there's so many other things that could have been done. All of the build up build-up towards the end could have been done a lot nicer. Daenerys's rage and wrath, while granted there were certain elements that, okay, yo, she just saw Cassandra die right there, get beheaded, and everything Cersei has put her through, her losing her dragons, which were more than dragons to her, those were her children. So you could throw the argument, dog, it was a build-up towards her wrath of everything she suffered, and she had enough. Also combining the fact that what Varys said of, dog, the Targaryens, flip a coin and hold your breath because you never know which way they would turn, and he was right, and he was always there for the people. If anything, the late Varys probably would have been one of the best people to sit on the Iron Throne, because he was right and he was really for the people. No matter what, he would tell the queen, even after he made that deal with Daenerys, he was like, dog, I'm gonna look you in the eye and tell you. And when Daenerys looked at him and said, I'm still gonna slaughter and massacre all those people, that's when he said, I bet, say less. And he decided on Jon Snow being the next best thing to take up the Iron Throne, because he had the rightful claim anyway. He's the last male Targaryen, and he's, you know, benevolent. Like, Jon Snow was the best pick. Clearly, throughout the entire series, there's no argument that he should have been the one to sit on the Iron Throne. No questions. And a lot of people felt betrayed, of course, because ultimately Jon Snow doesn't have a happy ending at the end. So what was the whole point of building all of this up? And again, I'm going to go back to, and we're going to dive further into this, that if we had more time to explore these concepts and ideas, it would have been better. Because for starters, the relationship between Daenerys and Jon Snow, in my opinion, developed extremely quick. They went from, we just met, we don't trust each other, to, oh, I love her, lad, that is my queen, I'm gonna fucking bend the knee for that little It was just, what? And then considering Daenerys has never, you know, shown that type of love for somebody, like she was rocking with old dude, what was his name, O'Hara, I forget dude's, O'Hara, now I'm talking about One Piece. But you know, she had a couple of flings here or there, but Daenerys never really showed that type of love for anybody up until Jon Snow, and it kind of went from, you know, this could have been something really great and really grand stretched over a season or two to, hey, you're hot, I'm hot, let's get together and let's bone. And all the talks of her not being able to get pregnant and Jon saying maybe the witch was bullshitting you and all that stuff, it kind of just again went fizzling out the window. And that all goes back to the problem that Game of Thrones probably wouldn't have felt like the absolute clusterfuck of a mess if it had those extra seasons. Between the fact that the war against the White Walkers was pretty much all contained in one episode, considering the fact that we have been building up the entire series to that moment and it lasted one episode. Granted, I wasn't the biggest fan of it to begin with. There were parts that I thought was really awesome and the lead up to it was excellent. I'm talking about when the White Walker dragon was melting the wall and everything. Like, I thought that was one of the most terrifying concepts somebody could possibly conceive, especially bringing it to the live action display, because you already have the idea that, dog, these giant dragons are very scary. But then you take these giant dragons and you take one of them and turn them into a zombie dragon that is being controlled by the Night King. It was fantastically done and it was very terrifying, and I thought that was one of the things that they executed very well up until the actual battle. And you could tell that they either wanted to cut costs. Everything between the dragon battles happened in the debris in the sky and you really couldn't see much of it. I was like, dog, I wanted to see this so bad, this looks so freaking cool. And it was like, hey Daenerys, where are you? We can't find the damn castle, what's going on? And I was like, what? So again, that battle, another victim of pacing issues and rushing through, probably budgets as well. They didn't have a budget that they would have been able to properly utilize for a couple of other seasons, or who knows, maybe they took a couple of chunks of budgets that would have been for those extra seasons and dumped it all into those, and it still wasn't enough to make them to what they should have been, in my opinion, because it kind of just felt all over the place. Why was Jon and Daenerys gone anyways? I mean, I guess what, they was trying to lure the Night King and that dragon away, but ultimately he still got there, people still died, and then they cut away from when people would die, like Theon Greyjoy dying, which Theon hates and slight love but not really relationship for him, because up until, what was it, season 6 or 7, he was still making stupid choices of having his sister, you know, basically captured by their uncle Euron Greyjoy and him jumping in the water. I was like, I thought we was past this. Reek. It really had me a little bit puzzled, like, yo, why are we regressing with Theon again? Granted, he ultimately went out like a hero and whatnot, but yeah, just Theon, not even on a bad writing per se type of idea, but in general, he was just a shitty person that, okay, he redeemed himself in the end, but you can go. Jorah Mormont, I felt like that was all right, his death. It wasn't like, oh my god, it's not like I ever got attached to him to begin with, but it was again adding to the idea of Daenerys's mind and mental state diminishing, because again, she's losing more people. She came to this war in the north that has nothing to do with her cause of liberating the world. Well, I guess you could throw the argument that she understood the dire consequences. But a lot of it was just, yo, dog, I need to rock with Jon Snow. First of all, I kind of have feelings for him, but also he's kind of my, ticket to winning this whole thing if I could have the North behind me. And I felt like to a certain degree, Daenerys really just kind of got jealous in a way. Like, there's the argument that no, Daenerys just was in this mental state that I'm the savior, I'm the hero, I'm the one that's going to liberate everything, and she would basically sacrifice anything and everybody. But I also felt to a certain degree, especially after she realized she wasn't going to get the same type of love that Aegon Targaryen, aka Jon Snow, was getting, that it kind of made her jealous, and also she would do anything and everything to keep Jon out of that title. And again, you could throw the argument, no, she was raised to think she's the destined one. It more so felt like, nah, this is my, I'm the one that's going to be on the throne. It was kind of like a regular ruler to a certain degree of, no, this is my throne, and even though you're the rightful heir and you're probably better than me, I'm going to just take this, all right? Shut up about it. And let me not get started on Sansa, because even up until the very end, I hate Sansa's character, dog. It was the spoiled little girl got her way in the end and still got a crown on her freaking head, and I was just disgusted with her because she went from like, oh, she's growing. Oh, she ended up flipping on Littlefinger, even though that was rushed as well, his death or whatnot, and kind of made Littlefinger like, yo, he was supposed to be this big figure, and in the end he got trapped by Sansa, which I guess it was her character arc coming full circle. But yeah, towards the end she became damn near close to like Cersei. Like, what was your problem with Dany again? You don't trust her? Why? She's in the North and brought all these people to help you. What is your problem? Oh yeah, Sansa, you really wanted to be king, don't lie. Even when Littlefinger was saying that, you wasn't completely playing him. You want to be king of the Iron Throne and whatnot. And if we ever get that sequel, I have no doubt in my mind that Sansa is going to be more like a Cersei character than ever, because Sansa was just shitty, dog. I couldn't stand her. I still can't stand Sansa Stark. Like, then let's get into the elephant in the room of the whole situation, and that's that everybody said they hated this one factor the most of everything to do with Game of Thrones, and I never heard about it, honestly. Like, I just knew people hated Game of Thrones. I didn't know who actually was picked to be on the Iron Throne until I found out that it was actually Bran that got picked to sit on the Iron Throne. And I'm gonna throw out a controversial one right here. I don't think that was a bad pick per se. I get it in terms of, as viewers, in terms of the way the setup was of the narrative, that, dog, it was gonna be Jon Snow. Like, it was very clear that there was other motives besides the fact of, yo, what a crazy subversion. Like, clearly the way Game of Thrones ends, it was to set things up for future stories to be told. It's the same reason why Dexter, if you ever watched Dexter, it ended the way it did with season 8. It's the same reason why at the end of like Naruto, Sasuke's going on a journey of atonement. It's to set up for future stories to happen. So Jon Snow, if he's on the Iron Throne, you could still continue the story in a weird way, but it wouldn't be the same as, oh, let's start it straight away how Game of Thrones started. He's with the Night's Watch, and you got Arya going on a journey west of West, and you got Sansa as the new queen of the North, and all of that. It was just basically to set things up, but still, it kind of felt like he wasn't present for a lot of things. And I was talking with a friend while I was watching Game of Thrones, this whole rewatch, and I kept telling him, and I didn't know that Bran sat on the Iron Throne. Honest to God, I had no idea. And I remember telling him, dog, if you remove Bran from this series, I was like on season 7 when I told him this, you remove Bran from this series, nothing changes. He's literally been like an outlier of the entire thing. And so for him to sit on the Iron Throne, in terms of the narrative that's been set forth, is hogwash. It's just straight up like, oh, come on, that's not what you set up for us, clearly. But apparently that was a part of George R. R. Martin's final finale that he was actually going to do. He was going to go with Bran, the kid that got pushed out the window, crippled, and ultimately couldn't walk, but learned to fly as the three-eyed raven. And still, there's a lot of fallacies in and of itself. The fact that Bran essentially has no empathy, he's not there. Also, a couple of contradictions. I will say, regarding that whole thing of maybe Bran can see the future because of that one line where he said, oh, I knew I had to come here all along. I'm going to throw that back to the whole thing where he kept on telling everybody, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Basically saying this is exactly what was supposed to happen. Not that he foresaw it, but this is the way the world is. Everybody's in places that they need to be because that's how you move the story of life. So I'm not going to be completely sold on the idea that he could see the future and he still let Daenerys slaughter all those people on King's Landing and let the war between Daenerys and Cersei go down. I'm going to throw the argument that maybe that was just a line that was a little bit muddied. Also to toy with people's minds of, yo, dog, can he see the future? Can he not? Why would he, so that was to add extra powers, I guess you could say, to make him really the true perfect ruler. Because realistically, if we're in the actual Game of Thrones series, right, if you're actually there, who better than somebody, if you go to the ideology of if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. He is history. He literally has history in his head of everything that ever happened. So if you have that at your disposal, ideally that's not that bad of a king. Like, he knows every mistake that's ever been made. He can make sure to not repeat those. He knows what's going on at all given times. So if there's any political warfare or anything like that, he can make sure to subvert it. If Sansa decides, yo, the North is going to take the kingdoms, we're going to kill my brother, which I wouldn't put it past, he can subvert that again because he has all of this all-seeing knowledge. It's the whole empathy situation, the whole idea that he could see the future, but he didn't subvert things. And again, that empathy thing goes a long way, because if the people can't feel you as a real person, if you're not really there per se with the people, how can they feel like you're a king? You could throw the argument, well, he necessarily doesn't have that, but that's why he has his hand, Tyrion, that is truly with the people. That's why he has people with the small council, that is people we actually can trust, like Sam. Even though Sam has a wife, how did he become a maester? Okay, we're gonna ignore that because, yeah, there are some bad stuff from the ending. I'm not denying that. But in terms of being a human encyclopedia that understands how to subvert wars, understands and can see everything going on right now, that's not a bad pick, to be honest with you. Of course, we all wanted Jon Snow to be Aegon Targaryen, sit on the Iron Throne. After he stabbed Dany, you thought naturally he's gonna go on and become king. Although then you're gonna argue, well, how would Grey Worm receive that information? Because, yo, that was his queen. He loved her. So there was some things that needed to be set up beforehand, which again would have been extended in a whole another season or two. It would have made it all make sense. But if Grey Worm wouldn't have been down with what Dany was doing at King's Landing, you change a couple of different things. That time where he sees that the dragon is blowing everything up, if you change it from that he rages and just starts killing the people that surrendered to, damn, Dany, you going too far, everything else would align perfectly for Jon to take the Iron Throne. Grey Worm wouldn't have contested after he stabbed Dany because he would have been understanding of she needed to die, she went too far. But because of Grey Worm, everything had to happen the way it did. Now granted, it was sad that Dany died the way she did because she started off very benevolent, but again, it was just another idea of absolute power corrupts absolutely. She got corrupted towards the end with this whole vision of, you know, I gotta save the world, I gotta save the world, and she became the same tyrant and monster that her father was. I quickly just want to talk about Cersei. I think that she played, for the most part, a very good villain. She was like the next best thing after Tywin was gone and whatnot. Like when she blew up the Septum in season 6, I believe, or 7, like that was great. Cersei played a pretty good villain. We either had that or, you know, the White Walkers. Cersei did her job for the most part up until the end. I wish she would have died a different way. She probably deserved a lot worse than to be in the arms of the man that loves her, like, just saying. But Cersei was a pretty good villain for the most part. I'm not gonna front on that. And Bran being chosen as a leader, narrative wise, in terms of the audience's expectations, it subverted it. Did it make the most sense? You could argue on that one because, again, like I said, he has the knowledge and capability to be a better king than everybody. Also, the fact that he has no wants. He doesn't want gold. He doesn't want women. He doesn't want power. It's kind of being forced upon him. He has no horse in the race, so to speak. So probably is one of the best that you could possibly get right now. It just feels like they should have set this up a lot better than, dog, I'm going over the wall and I'm a raven, dog, and I'm gonna just sit here while this whole Night King war goes down, and I'm gonna, well, you could throw the argument he helped by being bait so Arya could ultimately get that final blow, but yeah. And that's where I land with all of this. The fact that seasons 1 through 4, masterpiece. 5 through 6.5, you know, basically middle of 7, goes anywhere from straight up trash to it's mid. The second half of season 7 and parts of season 8 was actually really good. The finale is where you could tell, dog, they had to set this IP up for down the road they could make more money, and not had to, they wanted to. Like the way the whole small council scene ended in the end with Tyrion and them, it was just silly, goofy. A lot of it was nonsensical. It was like, that's how Game of Thrones ends? Jon walking away from the wall closing, even though isn't there like a giant gaping hole where the dragon melted? A lot of nonsensical shit, and again, it all could have been solved with an extra season or 2. But I say all that to say that Game of Thrones isn't all as terrible as people told me. I went in there expecting that at the end of it all, the Hound was gonna sit on the Iron Throne, and thankfully Clegane didn't, and his fight with the Mountain was actually really dope at the end, how he pushed him over and everything. Like, that was sick as well. Like, there was some great moments. It was just in the midst of rushing, running out of book material that George R. Martin, hands down, you can say whatever you want about him, but he is a genius. And yeah, Game of Thrones overall, it's a great series with a lot of problems and a very, you could say, divisive end, so to speak, where I sit with the end is that it's alright, could have been way better, could have been way worse. It's not as bad as people say. Let me know what you guys think about Game of Thrones. How do you feel about it in general as a whole? Is it yay, nay, masterpiece, favorite moments, favorite characters? I would rewatch. I'm not even gonna lie. I would definitely rewatch to get all of the subtle nuances, see if there's anything else I could pick up on Bran Stark that actually makes it legit of, hey, why is he sitting on the Iron Throne? He never gave a shit about nothing and he wasn't even relevant for like a whole season or some shit. But again, he is in the world of Game of Thrones, proper person to sit on the chair. He doesn't care for the power, he doesn't care for the role, and he has the knowledge and wisdom to guide people into the future. And alongside with hands like, you know, Tyrion and the people of the small council, they can guide him into the emotional aspects that he may be lacking. So live for this one, I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. Subscribe and hit that bell.